All right. Good morning. Good morning, everybody. Morning-ish, I guess. Mute that right there. Hi, everyone. This is Achyuta Bava from Nightlight Astrology. Today, I am live streaming the overview of June for all my sun and rising signs out there. So we're going to take the major transits of June through all 12 signs of the zodiac. We'll go Aries all the way through Pisces. And there's a lot to look at this month. I got 4 major transits that we're going to look at for all 12 signs through the zodiac. So I hope that you guys will enjoy this. I love to hear where you guys are coming from. Happy Memorial Day to everybody out there. Roll call. Where are you guys coming from? I'm going to read off some of them. California, Quebec, Jersey Shore, Slovenia, the Netherlands, New York City, Romania. Bonjour from Montreal. Lacey, Washington, South Florida. Amazing. I can't wait until I see someone pop up from Minnesota in the chat box, because I feel like I need some Northwest people. No, Nebraska, that's close. Indianapolis, Ohio, and Iowa, Detroit. We're getting closer. Michigan, getting closer to Minnesota. At some point, I'm going to find that there are some astrologers in my backyard. Okay, cool. Well, nice to be here with all of you. Like I said, we're going to take the 4 major transits of the month that I have. We're going to look at them for all 12 signs of the zodiac. I recommend looking at your rising sign because that's going to match up with the whole sign configuration of your birth chart, which is what ancient astrologers use. It's what I teach. It's what I work with in my practice. It's a really nice way because of doing your monthly horoscope, because the transits are going to sync up with exactly where the planets are in your birth chart at the moment. If you use your sun sign, you're artificially taking the sign of the sun in your chart, whatever house that might be located in, and you're putting that as the first house. So while I don't think that it's can't say that it doesn't work, it seems to have it seems to work, but I always prefer having the configuration with my actual birth chart. So I would recommend going with your rising sign. Anyway, so that being said, what are the transits of the month that I'm going to be looking at today? I'm going to look at Mars and Venus opposite Pluto this month. Those are 2 big transits happening in June. We're going to take a look at the solar eclipse in Gemini, which is happening in June. And we're going to take a look at Saturn square Uranus, which is happening in June. So 4 transits overall, kind of putting Mars and Venus opposite Pluto together as one transit. And then the solar eclipse and Saturn square Uranus. It's a huge month. I think it's probably the biggest month of the year astrologically. You could make the case for that. So yeah, it's a big one. I just finished recording this morning my overview for June in terms of breaking down. There's about 10 transits that I break down in that video, which you'll be able to watch tomorrow. So that one will debut tomorrow, and you can see the month of June is packed. The one I'm just hitting the obvious like big transits, but there's a lot more to look at this month. So it'll be a good month for astrology nerds. There's a lot to talk about. Okay, so before I dive in, you guys know that I'm in the midst of promoting my programs right now. So I'm just going to do a little bit of promo for my upcoming class, and then we'll dive right into the signs. My new class, Ancient Astrology for the Modern Mystic, begins on June 13th, just about 2 weeks away. I know a lot of you guys have been sending me messages. You're really excited. Our orientation package goes out by the end of this week. So for people who have already signed up, who are emailing saying, hey, when do I get all the information? You'll be fully hooked in, plugged into the classroom portal, getting all of your class syllabus and schedule, any kind of suggestions that we have for preparing for class. You'll be getting that by the end of this week. So it's looking like it's going to be a great group. People from all over the world taking the class. You can go to my website, nightlightastrology.com, click on the first year course. When you scroll down, you can learn everything that there is to know about the course, but a few things that aren't included that I should mention, because there's a few updates we still need to do on the website. We now have breakout study sessions to give people more personalized tutoring in between sessions. Our classes have gotten big. A lot of people in the classes are remote. They're studying on their own not necessarily coming to the live webinars. And so we've just done more to try and make sure that personalized tutoring is available for people. People can ask all the questions that they need to or want to. So I've got a staff full of my best students who are now helping me manage our chat forum, who are hosting breakout study and tutoring sessions. You can contact me throughout the year with questions, and I've got a staff of people, including myself, who will try to answer questions. If they're basic, my staff answers them. If they're more, complex, or people specifically want me to talk about something, maybe something more philosophical or spiritual or something like that, then I handle those questions. So you have like year-round support in the program. There's also a good chunk of the course that's dedicated to live readings and me showing you, doing a reading, then showing you how I did the reading, how I organized things, why I said and did things in the way that I did. And then we have live practice sessions where you guys bring in charts and we work on the charts that you bring into class. Those sessions are really, like, people love them so much. The study sessions, the practice sessions, the live readings, that I've actually created a whole nother year of just that kind of immersive hands-on experience with charts that's starting next fall. So that's like, most people really love my program because it adds that feature toward the end after we've studied all of the methods, theories, techniques. And then we go right into hands-on predictive work and counseling work and so forth with other people. Anyway, lots of people take the class for their own personal enrichment. A lot of people take the class because they want to read for others. There's a certification test at the end. You have 2 years from the start of the class to take the test if you want to. It's not required, it's optional. Anyway, if you're thinking of signing up, the early bird payment lets you save $500 off, is only available for a little bit longer. So be sure you take advantage of that prior to the start of class. There's 12 monthly payments, and then there's also tuition assistance or need-based tuition. It has a sliding scale for people who are in need. So if you have any questions, feel free to email us, info@nightlightastrology.com. Thank you guys for being patient and letting me plug my course. And now we're going to dive into the transits for the month, and I'm going to bring this up on the screen, and we're going to now go through all 12 signs, and I'm going to take you through the biggest transits of the month for those 12 signs. We're going to start with Aries. Sorry to my Pisces people, you have to wait. I know every month it's kind of like, oh man, I'm a Pisces, I got to wait till the end. We'll have timestamps on these. Usually we get the timestamps on so that people who are watching this later will know exactly when to fast forward to. But it's also like, I highly recommend listening to, one of the ways that I think that I've developed my skills as a reader or a horoscope writer or whatever, is I've watched a lot of horoscopes, and not just my own, but paying attention to how different houses and signs experience different transits as an astrologer is really useful. If you are a student of astrology, don't just fast forward to your sign, because you'll learn a lot more if you watch the way that astrologers break down all 12 signs, and watch like at least 3 or 4 different astrologers that you like and how they break down the horoscopes of the month, because you'll see how much of your own style comes into reading horoscopes too. You'll see how one astrologer may emphasize one dimension of an aspect, and another may emphasize a little bit of the other side of an aspect, because there's these transits are very multidimensional. Okay, so anyway, we're here with Aries, and here's what I'm going to do. I'm not going to flip. I don't want to flip through and highlight every single date, because that would take forever, and there'd just be a lot of shuffling around on the screen. So what I'm going to do is just kind of point out where the transits are happening and what to expect. So the 2 transits that are coming together this month of June are going to be Mars opposite Pluto, and then you're going to see Venus jumping into the sign of Cancer, and by the end of June will also be opposing Pluto. So those dates are June 5th and then June 23rd. On June 5th and 23rd, June 5th, Mars opposes Pluto. June 23rd, Venus opposes Pluto. So I'll be grouping those together for all 12 signs. If you're an Aries rising, there are some very big emotional dynamics happening around home and family this month, because Venus and Mars, both opposing Pluto, this Lord of death and rebirth, are opposing Pluto from within your 4th house, which is a place that's related to our roots, our home, our living environment, family and family members, parents. And so turnover emotionally at your roots is a part of the story of the month. Now, Pluto in the 10th house could be pressing the change because of external obligations, maybe things that are happening at work or things that are changing in your career or in the lives of family members. Their jobs are changing or their circumstances are changing, and it's affecting your own circumstances. So Pluto is out in the public in the 10th house or out in the place related to work. And it's, motivating change at the roots for you as an Aries. So watch for those around June 5th and June 23rd. Now, the other transit of the month that's huge is on June 10th. On June 10th, we're going to see a massive new moon solar eclipse in Gemini in your 3rd house. Now, with Mercury also moving into the heart of the sun, Cazimi on that day, that's in your 3rd house. Communication comes to mind for me here: media, technology, writing, learning, and turning over a new leaf in that area of your life. Whether you are, it could be something as mundane as getting a new cell phone, or it could be something more profound, like you're going to start studying something, or you're going to perhaps start teaching something. I love this as like initiating change, though, around the mind and learning, technology and media, speech, communication. Maybe something's happening with siblings, some changes in relationships with siblings, or important milestone events in the lives of siblings or people that are like siblings to you. So you could think of changes there as well. But this kind of change here, to me, is also about communication in terms of if you have something creative within you that you feel like you need to speak or get out of you, finding a creative means of expressing yourself could be a big part of what the eclipse indicates, not only now, but over the months to come, because eclipses typically take a little while to play out. Okay. The last major transit of the month that I'm looking at for everybody, is going to happen between Saturn and Uranus. So here's the 2 planets in your chart. They'll be squared exactly right around the 14th of June. Now that's happening between your 2nd house and your 11th house. This signals to me that there are major changes happening around groups of people, around allies, around friends, around community. And there could be some connection at the exact same time to money and finances, resources, business, and so forth. So when these 2 areas combine, generally what I see is collaboration around business or work. I look and I see people going, people asking themselves, who are my best resources in terms of friends, in terms of religious or spiritual community, in terms of political or social allies, and in terms of like really evaluating whether or not I feel like I belong in different social dynamics in my life, or the potential for collaboration that's really innovative is there. There's a real push-pull between Uranus and Saturn, of course, right now, where Uranus in your 2nd, if you're an Aries rising, wants to create breakthroughs around money and resources, wants to do things differently. Saturn might be about different kinds of social obligations or expectations that you have that might be, you might have to find compromise, or you might be struggling to create the breakthroughs that you want to see around money and finances because of different, almost like social inhibitions or prohibitions or blockages or something like that. So I would just consider being very, if you need to break from groups of people that aren't working for you in order to be innovative and, take steps in the direction that you feel is best, especially around money, business, things like that, then don't feel too bad about it. But also just know that, some patience and some collaboration and waiting. It can kind of like, don't be so impatient that you miss the potential for really good collaborations that may go slower than you want, or may require a little bit more compromise than you initially hoped for. So those are some of the things that I'm seeing for my Aries risings out there. So let's go ahead. And what I'm going to do now is I'm going to put Taurus on the ascendant, and we're going to go through those same planetary dynamics and see what's happening if you're a Taurus rising. So for Taurus rising, you're going to have Venus and Mars Venus is going to scoot into Cancer at the beginning of the month, and by the 23rd will oppose Pluto. So both Venus and Mars opposing Pluto from the 3rd to the 9th. I think about this as moments of philosophical, spiritual, emotional, and mental transformation. I look at this as patterns of communication and relationships changing. I look at this as a philosophical or spiritual breakthrough. I look at this as a moment of, information being communicated that is difficult, but that results in, fast and unexpected development in your spiritual life. I look at this as potential confrontation around ideologies or beliefs, with resolution as a possibility if you're able to go through some kind of death and rebirth process. So a lot of mental, spiritual, intellectual transformation on the radar that will probably tap into key relationships or even among family members. So I wouldn't be surprised if there was also some difficult news that came in around family members. Now, we look at the solar eclipse happening on June 10th, and that's happening if you're a Taurus rising in your 2nd house. That's your financial house with Mercury Cazimi that day. I love some kind of new, fresh start happening around money or finances, a new way of doing business, a new product or service, maybe a new financial advisor that you're seeing, or you're hiring someone to help you with your, organize your taxes, anything that would represent kind of a new way of doing business. I really like for Taurus risings. Also, whether it's getting out of debt or starting a new job, or, if you already own a business or are like a small business owner, I could see this as like a new product that you're launching. But I like the idea of a kind of a new chapter opening up for you around money and finances, and new, fresh, innovative ideas that could make your life easier coming in. This to me is probably one of the more beneficial transits out there in terms of money and business this month for any of the 12 signs. So really like this one for Taurus risings. Let's see. So we're going to go forward to, the one potential downside of this would be, this transit would be just making sure that, with Mercury retrograde, don't rush things that are new. You may get the idea, but the retrograde still has a little ways to play out. So don't be surprised if, a little bit later in the month, next month of July, August, if the new exciting ideas around business and money that are coming up, or the changes around resources that are happening, just be patient with them. Don't push them too hard, too quickly. Okay. So then we're going to the square between Saturn and Uranus on June 14th. And that square between Saturn and Uranus is happening between your 1st and your 10th. It's for me, because I'm a Taurus rising too. So this isn't hitting me so hard in my chart yet because it's not on a degree or a planet. But the gist of these two houses is, what are you obligated to professionally or socially or publicly? Saturn in the 10th, responsibility, maturity, mastery, obligation, constraint, confinement, or hardship. And how are you trying to redefine yourself personally in relation to your career? How are you trying to reframe your identity personally in relation to the perception that others have of you publicly? You may have to take some risks and defy conventions or other people's expectations. For example, mid-June, I very intentionally will be departing Facebook. I don't have the app on my new phone. I just got a new phone. I don't have the app on my new phone, and I don't plan on using it any longer because I feel like astrology is largely being politicized. And I don't like social media argumentation and rhetoric and debate in my head 24/7. So that's been a really conscious choice for me to kind of redefine myself in relation to a place that's been a part of my life. The public forum of Facebook has been a part of my life for, I don't know, like 15, 16 years or something crazy like that. So that's I'm a Taurus rising, so that's why I give that example. But there's some shift. You may have to defy what other people expect. There may be some defiance of authority or what other people want or expect from you. But at the same time, you don't have to burn bridges. You don't have to stick up your middle finger and you don't have to, punch anyone in the face about it, metaphorically. So watch for those changes though. They're very strong this month for those Taurus risings out there. Okay, so we're going to move forward now to Gemini. If you're a Gemini rising, the big news is, of course, the eclipse falling into your first house. And I mean, that's about as big as an eclipse as you can get. So that's going to be the big news for you this month. But let's go into the dynamics between Mars and Pluto across your 2nd and 8th. And then remember, Venus will enter Cancer at the beginning of the month and also oppose Pluto later in the month. So June 5th, Mars will oppose Pluto across your 2nd and 8th, Cancer and Capricorn. And then Venus opposes Pluto on June 23rd. Both of those transits are happening across the financial houses, my money, other people's money, my resources, other people's resources. So I like to think about this as a period that is focused on financial transformation, the accruing of or liberation from debt. It could be emotional, it could be karmic, it could be financial, but there's a lot going on this month if you're a Gemini rising about what is mine, what is somebody else's, what do I need from other people, what do they need from me, how much do I, how independent and self-sufficient do I feel versus, what kind of help or resources do I need from other people? And it's a very emotional change that's happening around these subjects as well. And it could actually tap into issues that are related to your family or family members because of that Cancerian emphasis that's there. So watch for that this month if you're a Gemini rising. Now, on June 10th, you're going to see the solar eclipse in your first house. So that first house solar eclipse is really good for personal identity transformation. I see people get, maybe they, it could be something as superficial as like, I've decided I'm going to go and get some Botox done. I've had clients that come in and they talk about something like that. I don't mean to say superficial as in, I'm not judging it. I'm just saying like the simple. It could be something more, intense. Like I've realized that I'm going to wear everything pink now, like whatever, like personal identity or appearance changes, physical changes regarding your health or your well-being or your vitality. These are very strongly indicated with eclipses in the first house. Sometimes there's going to be this sense of death and rebirth. I'm realizing I'm mortal. I have a little bit of a health scare, but it wakes me up somehow. I'm typically used to people also going through profound psychological shifts. I can't tell you how many clients I've had with first house eclipses that have realized that it's time to come out, or that it's time to, get out of a relationship, or I'm not in it anymore. This isn't me. I'm like this, but I'm not like that. So the kind of like a crossroads when it comes to your personal identity and how you feel like, communicating or sharing yourself with the world. So watch for those kinds of very personal psychological changes, identity shifts that might be happening for you right now in general. And then last but not least, we have the Saturn square Uranus dynamic. And for you, if you're a Gemini rising, the Saturn square Uranus dynamic is happening across the 9th and the 12th house axis. And I think about this in terms of almost like a taboo, defying conventional beliefs. Like this, for example, let's just go with the idea that, let's say someone's having that first house Gemini eclipse and you're deciding to come out, but you have to face and defy maybe let's say the religious dogma of a family that grew up and would condemn you for being gay. So Uranus in the 12th square to Saturn in the 9th, maybe some of the personal identity change that you're going through has to do with shifting values or beliefs or facing certain kinds of moral or spiritual authority figures and sort of recognizing how you're different, or, maybe there's also, and on the other hand, this exact same transit could very well represent someone who decides to defy or resist the voice of their conscience that's telling them, that's saying, hey, look, change is good, but the way that you're thinking of changing right now might be self-indulgent or something like that. And why don't you think this over? Why don't you be really careful that you're not, I will say that there's some times where people come in and they're like, I want to make this kind of change. What do you think? And I might see a transit like this happening at the same time and go like, well, is this aligned with your values? Like, who are you trying to make a statement to? And is it the inner child that's kind of trying to act out? And maybe that inner child needs like just a gentler version of an adult, or a gentler version of morality. Because oftentimes when we're kids, if people are too stern and strict, we end up in cycles of defiance throughout our lives that in some ways are only cured when we get a healthy internal voice of authority and judgment and morality installed back in us. Somehow we have to get rid of the punitive version of morality. So Saturn in the ninth could be, this month for Geminis, could be asking you to like reconfigure higher voices of reason or judgment or authority or morality or religion in relation to your own sense of identity or purpose in the world. Anyway, I wanted to spend a little bit more time on that because I think I think this is one of like my Geminis this month are going through a lot in terms of who am I, what am I doing, and what higher principles inform the personal changes that I feel like making right now. So that's my sense for Geminis anyway. All right, let's go forward to Cancers. So if you're a Cancer, remember these two transits opposite Pluto are now happening across your first and seventh house axis. Venus will enter Cancer right away at the beginning of the month, will oppose Pluto later in the month. So Mars opposes Pluto from Cancer to Capricorn on June 5th. Venus opposes Pluto from Cancer to Capricorn around June 23rd. And when I look at this, I go, okay, there are major changes happening across your relationship axis in terms of personal identity, and in terms of relational identity. There's spaces of vulnerability and the potential for real dramatic breakthroughs in relationships. There could also be what I want to call it is, every relationship is sometimes inundated by their family karma. So it's like you might find that you're in a fight with a spouse or a partner, someone that you're dating, and you realize suddenly that you're not fighting, your parents are fighting. You know what I mean? You're not fighting, your different family backgrounds are fighting. So I would look at this as a moment of healing by the end of the month, but maybe some drama earlier in the month around relationships, especially given the important things happening either in your families or in your family histories that are somehow coming into dialogue with, the relationship itself. So that's what I would look for, those kinds of themes coming together around June 5th and then June 23rd. All right, well, if you're a Cancer rising, the solar eclipse is in your 12th house. Not going to lie, that's a hard one because the 12th house, it was called Malas Daemon, or evil spirit. And it generally has the meaning of anything, any energy or influence that tends to take us off course, that takes something from us, whether it's our sanity, our health, our sense of being in control, our sense of good judgment, that it's anything that sort of pulls us off track. There's some really interesting reasons why they believe that about this place in the sky too, which I go over in my programs. But the gist of it is that an eclipse in this house is going to, especially given the intensity that's happening around Cancerian dynamics in your first house as a Cancer rising, I think that you're also going to look at patterns within you or within the family that have to do with self-destructiveness. I think there's a big emphasis on that this month. The good news for you, I'm just going to highlight this for Cancers because I know this is a little dark. You have Jupiter in your 9th house right now. And so whatever it is that you're going through, whatever kind of skeletons are in the closet, whatever family karma or ancestral wounds are being looked at or healed, Jupiter in the 9th will give you a sense of faith, hope, optimism. It'll help you know what the right thing to do is. So I love the presence of Jupiter there this month for you in your 9th. These are changes that are happening as you are growing morally, spiritually, intellectually. So you're ready to handle them. But that eclipse in the 12th can bring up like, okay, these are the ways in which, I live totally different lives. Like there's lies or there's secrets or there are self-destructive elements in me or my family or my past. And even though you might be over them at this stage in your life, they're like layers. And sometimes 12th house eclipses are going to bring up stuff where it's like, man, I thought I was over that. but it needs to come up again somehow. And the good news again is that Jupiter in your ninth should help you to feel like it's a really good thing that this is happening and that there's going to be good results that come out of it. So think about that as well happening with that 12th house eclipse. Now, finally, the Saturn-Uranus dynamic across the 12th and the 8th, there's debts that are being cleared. Saturn in the 8th is like a very clear picture of different kinds of karmic debts and obligations to other people. It's the feeling that we owe somebody to something, Saturn in the 8th, or that there's a feeling of isolation or separation between ourselves and others, and that we have to, with the square to Uranus in the 11th, it's like what I would understand as one of the main breakthroughs that Cancer risings could be going through right now is to realize like what walls have isolated or separated you from the people that are most important to you. What kinds of self-imposed limiting ideas or beliefs do you have that isolate or separate you from people that really care about you, or the people that could really help you, or the people that you would really enjoy? So I feel like for Cancers this month, there's a lot of like getting out of your own way and taking down different kinds of emotional barriers and clearing yourself of this different kinds of fears or different kinds of social anxieties. So I like the Uranus-Saturn dynamic across these houses as clearing, forgiving, or moving beyond certain kinds of social debts or constraints. Now, if you belong to any groups that play a large role in your life, it would also not be surprising to see that there could be serious changes within the structures of organizations or groups that you belong to. So watch for that, and that will peak for you, as it will for everybody, right around the middle of June, June 14th. All right, so we're going to take this forward and put Leo rising on we're going to put Leo on the ascendant now. So if you're a Leo rising, again, let's start off with the Cancerian dynamics in your chart. And this, for me, this is one of the more difficult placements for the oppositions between Venus, Mars, and Pluto. So remember, Mars opposes Pluto on June 5th. Venus will go into Cancer early June and then oppose Pluto by about June 23rd. On June 11th, Mars will finally get out of your 12th house. And then on June 23rd, and then toward the very end of June, Venus will enter your first house. To me, June is a month of more dramatic and intense emotional dynamics in your relationships, very similar to Cancer rising. But you're going to see healing and recovery and some kind of personal synthesis in July when Venus and Mars get together in your first house, after opposing Saturn in the 7th. So here's what I would be especially careful of if you're a Leo rising: secretive or underhanded, manipulative, behind the scenes drama, gossip, fighting, manipulating, anything that's like not totally out in the clear. I would be very careful of, because there will be a steep price to pay for it. Steer clear of trying to manipulate things behind the scenes. Steer clear of emotional coercion or blackmailing of people. Like just get out of the soap opera drama if it comes up at all. The other thing is, don't fight or try to if you're feeling like unrecognized or underappreciated for something, don't try to fight or jockey for position. Position will totally take care of itself. Like if you're feeling unappreciated, or if you feel like people are, kind of trying to undermine you, things will take care of themselves by later in July for you as a Leo. So don't feel like your pride can be injured if you're a Leo, and then you'll act out. And then when you do, people will all say you have an ego. So it's like you're damned if you do, you're damned if you don't. But things will naturally correct themselves later in July. There's some relationship challenges for you in June and July that are, pretty intense. And then they shift later in July after Mars and Venus get out of the 12th, after opposing Pluto. They go into the 1st. They become a lot more visible. The problems start being addressed more full on in July. They oppose Saturn in the 7th. There's some back and forth. And then by the late July, Venus and Mars conjoin in your first house. And that should be resolution to any of the conflicts you're dealing with in June. So that's my sense there. And I would think, especially in personal or private relationships, or possibly like work or family relationships, those just relationships in general. So now the solar eclipse is coming into your 11th house. So there's something new happening socially in your life this month that's also pertaining to groups of people, allies, colleagues, any kind of group or organization that you work for. The new moon, solar eclipse, Mercury cazimi suggests, yeah, there's a big social shift happening in that 11th house. You're not going to feel it right away. And like I said, I really like later July for you and the rest of the summer, from mid to late July forward. And so if there are larger social changes happening in your life, like larger social scenes or dynamics or different places that you participate or belong to, the changes are happening there as well. And there's something new that's getting started here in June, and you'll feel that playing out, and you'll feel a lot happier about it, and there'll be less conflict and drama surrounding that social shift later in July again. So let's see. Last but not least, Saturn square Uranus, that happens on June 14th. Now, for you, this, again, where does it happen? It happens between the house of relationships, Saturn in the 7th, and Uranus in the 10th, your public appearance or your work. So there's the need for revolution or changing of your public identity, your role in the workplace, or what you're doing for a living. There's big shifts happening there. Going back to May of 2018, this has been a theme. But now it has to do with what other people expect of you, or social or relational contracts that you have with other people, and how they are either limiting or helping you evolve in the way that you're hoping to professionally. And that'll be really in the spotlight about mid-June. So you can see how it all fits together for Leos. And again, I feel like very sure that later in July, things will be a totally different story for my Leo risings, who do have a little bit of a rough June from as far as I can tell. But the blessings and the feeling of it having been worth it, that is there as well a little later in the summer. Okay, let's go to Virgo. So if you're a Virgo rising, we're looking at the Mars-Pluto dynamic, and then Venus enters Cancer early June and then repeats the opposition to Pluto later in June. So let's go to June 5th for Mars opposite Pluto, and then June 23rd, Venus opposite Pluto. And this is your 11th to 5th houses. If you're a Virgo rising, I like this transit for, if there's been stress or drama within the emotional dynamics of your social life. What I mean by that is like, not necessarily what's happening, but how you feel about what's happening. How do you feel about the changes happening around you? Have you felt swept up by them? Have you felt that they've been impersonal and objectifying? I think it's possible that right now there's been, when Mars is in Cancer in the 11th, if you're a Virgo rising, there can be a feeling that the changes happening around you are happening in a way that's very insensitive. Maybe you're the one that's instigating those things or perpetuating them, or maybe you're a victim of them. But the feeling of kind of like things rolling on and moving forward, but feeling steamrolled by them emotionally. I feel like I've been seeing that a lot with my Virgo clients lately, and in express readings I've done and stuff like that. And the Venus coming into Cancer in that house will smooth things over, but there are some big changes that need to happen. And if you need to address things with people or friends or within groups and say, hey, look, there's some way that something doesn't feel right to me, don't be afraid to speak up about it. But you could get a bigger reaction than you expect, especially around the Mars opposition to Pluto early in the month. Venus's opposition to Pluto later in the month, I feel like could be pretty healing for you. But a little bit of social drama within groups, friends, colleagues, allies, the workplace, and some real changes happening there. That, on the other hand, one of the things that can happen here is when you feel the pressure to conform to a group of people or to certain social expectations, there could be a history here that goes back to your family somehow. How does your family expect you to be, or how was your family socially? How do they expect you to be socially? And what really brings you joy? In contrast to what you feel others need or what others expect of you, what actually brings you happiness or joy? Maybe there's some things that need to change there so that you can be a more authentic version of yourself. So I would look for like getting into the emotional roots of your social life and being like, do I like the way that I'm showing up in these settings? Is it really bring me joy, or am I acting out of a feeling of, emotional obligation? Cancer in the 11th will often act out of a sense of, wanting to belong socially, like your social life is a family that will either accept you and give you a feeling of safety or reject you. So, the opposition to Pluto in the 5th will potentially help you tap in to, well, what's your happiness? What is your creative essence? And are you living in alignment with that? Or are you just living according to, group think and the feeling of, maybe some old ancestral wounds that are causing you to act or behave socially in certain ways? Okay, so the next one is the solar eclipse. Solar eclipse in June 10th is in your career house. This is the start of a new chapter for you in terms of career. You can even see it in little kids. Like my daughter is going to a science, like a little 2-week long like science summer camp. She's going to do sciencey stuff. There's a solar eclipse in her 10th house in Gemini. How fitting is that she'll be starting this little science camp like a couple of days after the eclipse in her 10th house? So whatever it is, whether it's starting a new class, learning something new, but there's changes happening around your relation to work, authority, your calling, your sense of purpose in life, in the more, probably more in the public, social, and professional arena. And I love this eclipse for Virgo. Some really good changes that are happening there, especially with Mercury, who's going to be Cazimi on the day of the eclipse. And then finally, Saturn square Uranus. Now, Saturn square to Uranus is happening across the 9th and the 6th. So I also like this in terms of there being, especially since May of 2018, if you're a Virgo, there's been a shift in terms of higher learning, teachers, potentially travel, religion, and the need for originality and innovation in those areas of life. Saturn in the 6th is also requiring hard work, discipline, effort, maturity. So it can't just be, with Saturn pressing on Uranus from that 9th house, it's kind of like you could be nomadic traveling scholar, but you better be getting something done. You better be serious. There better be an element of sacrifice and discipline involved. And Saturn's kind of requiring that of Uranus in the 9th right now. So how are those two getting together? Or, is Saturn demanding too much and Uranus needs to, have a little bit more freedom? So there's a dialogue between those two places. 6th house tends to be a lot about work and discipline. Okay, so let's go to, where are we? Virgo. So we're going to Libra rising next. We're on the second half of the zodiac. All right, so for Libra rising. So for Libra rising, the two major transits from Cancer, you see Venus entering Cancer here, and then both of them will be opposing Pluto. Mars opposes Pluto on June 5th. Venus opposes Pluto by the end of the month, June 23rd. So major changes happening if you're a Libra rising in the workplace. It would not surprise me to see major drama and conflict in the workplace early in the month for you if you're a Libra rising. And I say major because Mars is in its fall in your career house opposing Pluto. So, it could be that family drama calls you out of work. It could be that family drama coincides with work somehow. It could be that the themes of Mars and Cancer, Moon Mars themes, permeate the workplace. But I wouldn't be surprised for more dramatic escalation of, the intense Mars Pluto themes, specifically in the arena of your career in the first week of the month. Now, Venus comes in a little bit later on June 23rd and offers a salve, offers some healing, says, okay, the relationship, things need to evolve or change somehow. And Venus is with Pluto is more willing for that breakthrough to be about agreement and cooperation than Mars is. But Mars might break the door open, and then Venus comes in as a diplomat and kind of cleans up and says, okay, well, let me replace your door, whatever. So, but watch for that in the career house if you're a Libra rising. Now it's motivated by Pluto in the 4th. And I wouldn't necessarily look at this. I mean, it could involve themes related to, family, home, ancestry, the kind of tribal qualities of Cancer. But Pluto in the fourth will just generally speaking bring things up that have been hidden or buried or that have a lot of power and pop behind them, but they aren't seen. They're not being spoken, or you can feel them, but they're not showing themselves. And then they will show themselves early in the month. Now let's go forward to, oops. Okay, so then we're going to the solar eclipse on June 10th. Solar eclipse on June 10th is in your ninth house. This is great in terms of there being a new beginning. If you're studying something new, finding a new teacher, mentor, guru, or if you're going to teach somebody else, if you're developing some kind of program that you're going to teach to other people. So anything related to teaching and education really strongly indicated this month. And I would think very positive, some kind of positive new beginning happening in that area. It could mean that there's travel coming up for you abroad, or that there's some kind of, international theme or foreign cultures, people, or places that are going to play a strong role in your life somehow over the summer. It could also be a sign that there is the need to start questioning something. An eclipse in Gemini in that house will often result in some kind of critical evaluation or skeptical inquiry or data gathering or something like that. The development of particular technical skills or abilities, learning more about things that are related to a system of information or a technological, like a software or like a technical skill or something like that. So anything like that could also be coming into your life somehow over the summer, starting in June. Now, finally, we also have the Saturn-Uranus dynamic, and that for you is happening across the 8th and the 5th. Now, across that house axis, I think a lot about pleasure and the complex relationship with pleasure that people have. It's just because it feels like 7 or 8 times out of 10 when I see someone with squares across the 5th and the 8th, and especially when Saturn's in the 5th, you're talking about the hard time that people have of appropriately defining pleasure, joy, creativity. The 5th house was called the house of good fortune, and it was called the joy of Venus, which means it had a intimate relationship with pleasure, with sex, with romance, with children and procreation, with creativity in the arts. That anything that you do where you really feel like I'm in my joy right now. Well, Saturn in the 5th is a bit of a killjoy at times, or Saturn in the 5th is about, the combination of seriousness and commitment and joy and happiness. For example, Saturn in the 5th is often a sign that people will have a hard time when it comes to raising kids. I'm too much of a disciplinarian. I don't know how to have fun as a parent. I have to learn how to do it. It doesn't come naturally to me. Or on the other hand, it could be a sign that there was a parent in your life who was overbearing and said that, anything that was really creative or original about you needed to be, shut up and trained and put in some more structured environment. So there's often dynamics like that you're working out in one way or another. Saturn in the 5th square to Uranus in the 8th feels to me like I don't care what other people think about me or expect of me or require of me. I need to break free of other people's limiting ideas or beliefs. Or, for example, I've seen this happen a number of times. So-and-so is in a relationship with someone and they say, you know what? My partner is cold and not intimate. They don't show affection. They don't like to have sex. They have a hard time with intimacy, and I'm done, right? I'm going to tell them that they either change or I'm done because I need to go salsa dancing and I need to get laid. You know what I mean? So it's there's just that kind of, there's something about pleasure, but also how pleasure or joy or creativity is related to other people and the karmic bonds that you have with other people. And there's some breakthrough that's trying to express itself there right now for you if you're a Libra. There's other thoughts that we could say about that placement too, but karma around children, if you have them, could shift significantly. Different kind of limitations that you're able to, kind of break through different kinds of limiting factors in relationships with children. So that I like this as kind of let's have more fun, Libras. Let's get over some of our inhibitions or our blocks around joy, around our creativity. And it's going to be something that has to happen by looking at your relationships. Okay, let's go on to Scorpio rising. We're going to put Scorpio rising on the ascendant. So Scorpio rising is obviously a Mars-ruled sign. And at the beginning of the month, that that planet, your ruling planet Mars, is going right through the opposition with Pluto across the 9th and the 3rd. Venus will enter Cancer and then also oppose Pluto. That's happening June 5th, the Mars opposite Pluto, and then June 23rd for Venus opposite Pluto. That transit in particular across the 9th and the 3rd house, just like for Taurus risings, is about spiritual, intellectual, philosophical breakthroughs. The big thing here is that there's probably some kind of family or ancestral history that is being brought up in relation to your beliefs, in relation to education, or in relation to religion. Whenever you see, the Mars in Cancer in the 9th, you're always thinking like there's, the potential for conflicts around ideology and belief that go back to how I was raised, that go back to what my mom and dad taught me, that go back to what my ancestors believed and practiced. For example, I have a client who just recently, while Mars was in Cancer, decided to plan a trip to go back and see their like sort of European pagan religious roots. They want to see some of the places in the world where their great ancestors had pagan religious practices. Mars and Cancer in the 9th house. They're going to go on like a pagan ancestral expedition. They're not going on it while Mars is in Cancer, but they plan the trip. So you can see things like that sometimes. But the main thing, though, is this kind of emotional dynamism, the family background, the relation to religion, higher education, the pursuit of truth and knowledge, maybe traveling abroad or foreign cultures or countries or people or whatever. And this feeling of catharsis that needs to happen sort of mentally and intellectually. So that's what I'm seeing. Now, for example, I have a family member who is a Scorpio rising, and for the first time in many years, they've been reading a spiritual, I would call it a spiritual book. And they've been, just felt like sharing it with me. So I was like, wow, that's really interesting that this person is a Scorpio rising and that they're reaching out, a family member, to tell me that they're reading a spiritual book. And I think people in my, some people in my family obviously feel like they can tell me about it because they know that I'm basically, I'm a monk astrologer, like you're safe with me, So, but that's another example. So, but you're going to see this kind of intense intellectual, spiritual, emotional, perhaps ancestral catharsis around the beginning of the month. It'll probably tap into mental and intellectual and spiritual things going on inside of you. And then again, on the 23rd, the opportunity for resolution, healing. I mean, I could see this as a moment around a family table where things blew up around differing political or religious beliefs, for example. And then there's maybe the potential for a little bit of healing or resolution if there's been drama later in the month of June when Venus opposes Pluto. Okay, so let's go on to the solar eclipse, which is in your 8th house. So the solar eclipse in the 8th, if you're a Scorpio, the good news about this is that usually eclipses in the 8th, again, with a Mercury cazimi, solar eclipses, they will bring new resources into your life in the form of other people or other people's things or other people's skills. So, some of the most important, for example, when I've hired people that have been super invaluable to me in terms of people that have helped me over the 10 years, whether it's as a yoga studio owner or as an astrologer or whatever, when those people have come into my life a few times, they've been through 8th house transits, like Jupiter in the 8th or a solar eclipse in the 8th. So, don't be surprised if really helpful new assets, information that other people have, skills that other people can teach you. Even, sometimes it's going to be money that people have or referral that gets you a job or something like that. But I like the idea of resources coming in through other people for you this month after the solar eclipse. It might take a little bit, like, maybe there's maybe also someone from the past coming back to help you because of Mercury being retrograde. That's something that just popped into my head. The other thing would be death. Like sometimes new chapters happen in our life because, we pull the death card. I like to think that the death card is usually metaphorical and not literal, but sometimes it is literal. So it could be that some things are reaching their expiration, but a solar eclipse would signal that expiration is coming with a very powerful new beginning attached. So that can't be entirely bad, especially not when you have Jupiter a planet of abundance in the fifth house of good fortune squaring the eclipse at the same time. Like you'll be all right, even if if there is some kind of loss this month for Scorpios. The starting fresh will be probably be quite abundant. Jupiter's in a very fertile water sign in a really good house right now in your chart if you're a Scorpio. So I wouldn't worry about it too much. But finally, Saturn square Uranus. This is happening between your 7th and 4th. So that's on the 14th of June. That Saturn square Uranus dynamic is, probably touching in on, obviously, on relationships and on home and family. So there's been a push-pull there for you for a while now. Saturn in the 4th. For example, I'll tell you kind of anonymously tell you a story. So I have a client. I'm going to kind of mask the story a little bit, but I have a client who right now is in a situation where this person is saying, if my partner will not move because of these very important reasons to me, then I'm going to break up. It sounds on the surface, it sounds like, well, man, I mean, do you care about them? I mean, it sounds, an ultimatum is never a good sign in a relationship, I guess, right? So it seems a little like, cringy, right? But then when this person outlined, this is like, it's a breaking point for the relationship. It's the moving is symbolic, or it's like emblematic of much deeper issues. And either we make this shift together or I'm going to break up. And that's this person that came to me, Scorpio rising, that is going through that dynamic right as Saturn and Uranus are getting into the square. Now, I will say that this person also has Uranus on the descendant, which is that critical degree in the 7th house, which is sort of pictured here too, if you can see that ascendant is at 11. But anyway, the point is just that that doesn't have to be necessarily that intense, but the idea that there's a breakthrough, there's a push and a pull happening between marriage relationships and home and family for Scorpio risings this month is a big deal. And, again, be patient with the process and know that, some kind of breakthrough is at hand, and the relationship may need to change to accommodate Saturn's needs for groundedness in the 4th, or Saturn may need to loosen up because the relationship won't last if it doesn't. So think of those tensions on either side. All right, let's go forward to Sagittarius rising. So with Sag rising, we're going to take those Cancerian transits. We're going to take Mars in Cancer opposing Pluto, and then Venus will enter Cancer early part of the month and oppose Pluto again later in the month. So those two transits on June 5th and the 23rd are across your financial axis again. So this is the same as what Gemini risings had, where you're going to see the potential for catharsis and change around both relationships and probably resources within relationships. If there is a feeling of I am always in the position of relying on someone else, don't be surprised if this month forces you to become more self-reliant. And the opposite extreme could be true as well. If you tend to be the breadwinner or someone who's always picking others up emotionally or helping them out financially, don't be surprised if this month needs to be a month where you set firmer boundaries. I would see these things peaking in the early part of the month, and then maybe there's some healing that comes in around the same topics a little bit later in the month, like June 23rd or so. Okay, so financial dynamics changing, though, either way, pretty dramatically. 5th and the 23rd are your key dates. Now, this goes in line with a solar eclipse in your 7th house. That solar eclipse is happening on June 10th, right off from the lunar eclipse you had on May 26th in your 1st house. Solar eclipse in your 7th are great for meeting new people or getting into new relationships. Sometimes they are also the sign of needing to go or part ways. I need a fresh start. This is stagnant. This isn't going anywhere. It's time to make a change. But usually the feeling of newness, confidence, inspiration, and a new beginning are behind it, whether you're getting out or getting in. And so that usually makes breakups a little bit easier. Solar eclipse breakups in the 7th are usually a little easier than like a lunar eclipse breakup, for example. But at any rate, revisions in relationships, changes that are happening for partners that are very significant, people coming in from your past that are significant. Watch for that because of the Mercury retrograde as well. Then we go to Saturn square Uranus. Now, Saturn square to Uranus is happening across your 3rd and your 6th houses. I would look at this as to me, again, for some of the placements of these planets are more difficult than others. And to me, this is one of the more difficult expressions of the Saturn-Uranus dynamic. And let me try to explain why. Saturn in the third house, it would be kind of like if you live on a block in New York City and there's jackhammering going on all summer, or there's like, that just, if you've ever lived in, I lived in Harlem, for about a year, and in an apartment by myself, and there was a construction project going on. And literally from the time I woke up to the time I went to bed, there was this thing that would go boom, boom. And it was like, I think it was smashing apart like a concrete parking lot or something like that. Anytime you have Saturn or Uranus in the sixth or the third, either of those planets, including Mars would be another one in these two places that I don't necessarily love. Pluto, maybe a little bit too. But they just tend to provide your immediate environment with lots of frustrating or limiting or prohibiting circumstances. Uranus is not going to be liking those. Uranus in the sixth is going to be wanting to be liberated from frustrating, limiting, constraining circumstances. Uranus is not going to want to do all of the drudgery of the sixth house. Uranus wants to break free from those dynamics, but Saturn is somehow saying, no, your immediate environment is maybe surrounded with certain kinds of constraints or limitations, and you're just going to have to deal with it. So that would be, to me, like Sag risings are like, yeah, your environment's going to be a little hectic and chaotic, and you're not going to like it, but you'll get through it. For example, I have another family member who is in the process of moving from one place to another. Like, if this is your month of June and you're moving, yeah, you're going to feel like you just want to be free and clear of all of this, all of the, the work and sweat and labor and details of moving. Like, this is like perfect picture of someone potentially moving and having and really being sort of feeling like pent up and wanting to rattle the cage and get out. On the other hand, this could also be a sign that you need a different kind of mental approach to adjust or adapt to things. Like, this is a very good transit for people who need a new paradigm or a new way of thinking that will help you adapt and meet challenges. The third house is a very mental house. Saturn in the third, square Uranus in the sixth. I'm struggling with something. Maybe I need a new approach mentally, intellectually. Maybe I need a new way of communicating. Maybe there's a piece of technology that could help me. Maybe there's some kind of tool I could use to help fix something or alleviate some kind of burden that's just really bothering me. But you may be on a quest, in other words, while Mercury's retrograde, no less, to fix or deal with things that are popping up and being troublesome. So that's, again, I think Sages have it a little bit more difficult with this particular transit. That's my sense of it anyway. But okay, let's move on. So Sages out there, I hope to hear very good things from you. You guys have to tell me your stories this month. I think I asked for that in a previous transit not long ago too, because Sages have had some tough stuff going on. All right, so let's go forward to Capricorn rising. If you're a Capricorn rising, both of these transits from Mars and Venus are going to be across your first and seventh house. You got basically the same dynamics from an archetypal standpoint as your Cancer risings out there. It's relationship stuff. Relationship dynamics, Mars and Venus in the seventh, probably coming from a partner or from a loved one and something going on in their family or their life or their health or their body or their mental, their mental life, their mental emotional health. But they might be requesting that you change or that you help them, or that there is some kind of personal catharsis that's happening because of the pressure coming in through your relationship or through a partner. I would watch for that to be especially volatile and potentially challenging around June 5th, toning down and becoming a lot easier to deal with by the 23rd when Venus opposes. Both of them, though, could require some kind of emotional transformation within relationships. You could also see this playing out in family relationships, not necessarily your own, but in the lives of family members because of that Cancerian lunar emphasis, sort of the emotional dynamics of people that you're close to. For example, I've seen clients who will have major transits in Cancer in the seventh when a sister gets divorced, or like a family member is going through a rough patch somehow. So can sometimes drag in like the peripheral family relationship dynamics too. Now, the potential for healing, though, is there. Remember that these transits are transformative with Pluto, and things that need to be brought up will be brought up. Meanwhile, you have the solar eclipse in your 6th house on June 10th. For me, solar eclipses in the 6th house go one of two ways. They either introduce a period of time into your life where you're going to be working hard on something, sacrificing something, serving something greater than yourself, or potentially getting wrapped up in something that you don't want to do. That's like hard, sort of laborious drudgery. You feel a little enslaved to it. So it can go one of those two ways. A new period of something you're going to be working on with a lot of enthusiasm, but it requires a lot. There's a lot of work. There's a lot of effort. And there's sacrifice and compromise and service, but you love it. On the other hand, it tends to go in the direction of I have to do something and it's going to kind of suck and it's going to require a lot of energy. I think you can shift to the 6th house. Mars energy is very athletic. It's like, yeah, well, it sucks to do push-ups, it sucks to work. It sucks to work out or go running, or it sucks to eat a good diet. There's, what do they say? Feel the burn. You know what I mean? So the 6th house was called the Mala Fortuna, bad fortune. It was called the house of Mars, god of strife, but also a house that was related to, soldiers and military and conflict and stuff like that. So you're either in the conflict with a spirit of like a can-do toughness and perseverance and sacrifice, or you're going to feel just really potentially agitated by it. So I think it's comes down to a mental choice if you're a Capricorn rising. All right. So last but not least, Saturn square Uranus. This is on June 14th between the 2nd and the 5th. 2nd house Saturn, financial obligations, requirements, constraints, hard work, discipline. I see oftentimes people start businesses when Saturn goes into the 2nd, and there's that couple of years while Saturn's in the 2nd of having to do a lot of hard work to get a business off the ground, or there's big investments or big projects that people are investing in. I've seen people renovating or adding an addition to their home. It's stretched out over a year and a half. There's a lot of unexpected expenses, but it ends up paying off. So Saturn in the 2nd, it's a good Saturn. It's in its own sign. There's a lot of hard work, discipline, structuring, long-term patience required for something that's changing or building financially for you. But you're also hitting some key moments with Uranus in the 5th, who wants to provide you with inspiration, joy, creative breakthroughs. So I like this right now for my Capricorns as a moment of also potentially speeding up or providing you with some creative inspiration to move through some limits or blockages around business, money, or finances. Though it also could be that you're getting good ideas, but you have to wait to implement them, or there needs to be like a very careful process in how you implement them. All right, so that's what I've got for you guys as Capricorn risings. Now we go forward to Aquarius rising. Aquarius rising, you're going to see the dynamic between the Cancerian planets across your 6th and your 12th. Remember, the Mars opposes Pluto around June 5th, and then Venus enters Cancer and will also oppose Pluto by June 23rd. Again, just like my Leos, this is a tough one. These are dynamics that are just in very similar fashion to what Leos are going through this month. The potential for more strenuous emotional conflict, especially around family or in more sensitive areas of our life. Now that's there for you if you're an Aquarius rising. Then remember, in July, Venus and Mars are going to go through an opposition to Saturn in your 1st, and then Venus and Mars are going to conjoin in the 7th. A little bit of, more intense emotional conflict in the month of June, followed by like a principled standoff in July that ends in resolution later in July, is what I'm looking at for both my Leo and Aquarius risings. The reason for this is that the 6th and the 12th house with Venus and Mars opposite Pluto will dredge up the kind of deeper unconscious emotional drama in relationships, potentially family relationships in particular. And then when those two planets, Venus and Mars, enter your 7th house, they will oppose Saturn in your 1st, kind of a principled standoff, or, kind of conflicts in relationships growing and becoming more visible and obvious. And then by later in July, Venus and Mars conjoin in Leo in your 7th, and things look like they're happily resolved. So, but that's a long process for both Leos and Aquarius risings between now and later in July. So just knowing what you're getting into and knowing that there's going to become some big ups and downs around relationships between now and the end of July. All right. If we go to the next piece, we're going to solar eclipse in Gemini in your 5th house. Look, I'll tell you this, solar eclipses in the 5th house have led to babies more times than I could possibly count in my practice. Hundreds, literally hundreds of times that I've seen solar eclipses result in having babies. So could that be, part of what's going on? I would not be surprised at all to hear at least a few stories this month that I'll hear from people through my YouTube or whatever, being like, yeah, I just got pregnant, or yeah, we're trying to get pregnant and we're struggling and there's been a lot of conflict around it in my marriage or something like that. But the solar eclipse in Gemini in the 5th, well, it's not like Gemini is not like the world's most fertile sign, but it still could suggest like, hey, we tried to have a kid in the past. I had a miscarriage in the past. I've been scared of it. I'm going to try again. Mercury retrograde in the 5th, solar eclipse in the 5th. We've been trying, and now suddenly I am pregnant. But anything revolving around children, pregnancy, there could be some very big changes around those topics coming in after the June 10th eclipse. And then I would also say any kind of creative endeavor. 5th house eclipses, how many times have I seen people say, I'm going to start taking guitar lessons, or I'm going to start writing poetry, or I'm going to maybe I'm going to share my my creative talent on some kind of stage. I'm going to take dance lessons, for God's sake. It could be anything creative or related to the arts and anything that brings joy. I'm going to start dating again. Or it could be that I'm going to go to an art festival, or I'm going to go to a music festival. So anything related to joy, pleasure, sexuality, romance, creativity, but a strong wave coming in around that house. So watch for that. That's June 10th. All right. And then finally, Saturn square Uranus. So Saturn square Uranus, if you're in Aquarius rising, between your 1st and your 4th. Since May of 2018, Uranus has been in your 4th house, trying to create some breakthroughs around home, family, living environment. I've seen Uranus in the 4th come, and lots of people have moved. Lots of people have had parents or grandparents who have passed and shaken up, the kind of family karma. There's tectonic plates moving around your area of home and family since May of 2018, and they're going to keep going. They're just going to things are going to keep getting shaken up. But it's really interesting that as soon as Saturn, your ruling planet, entered into your 1st house, the question of who am I, or my physical appearance, or my health, or my vitality in relation to my living environment, my past, my heredity, my ancestry, has been on the table. And I had a client not long ago who, they're an older client who's retiring, and the Saturn Uranus dynamic is coming into focus as they are preparing to move to Florida. A lot of people obviously move to Florida for retirement. So they're moving to Florida to join in a, what do you call it? A retirement community. I think that's what they're called. It's not like sorry, all my retired people are going to be so offended. It's not a nursing home, obviously. It's a place. It's like a gated community for a retired community. I think that's what they're called. Someone tell me what those communities are called. But anyway, so they're gonna go get their Florida on Saturn Uranus. Why? Because they were concerned about their health. So they're going to Margaritaville. So that's a Saturn Uranus dynamic. Who am I? I'm at a crossroads personally with my health, with my body, with my motivation, with my sense of character on the stage of life. And I need some kind of breakthrough at a very deep level. And it's probably going to shake up things at the roots. I think identity and living environment, identity and family, those are the 2 areas that are really getting pressed on with this dynamic. Okay, so let's go to the last sign, and that's going to be Pisces rising. Now, for Pisces rising, we're looking at the interaction between Mars and Pluto again, and then Venus entering Cancer and eventually opposing Pluto as well from the 5th to the 11th houses. First of all, the 5th house, for me, the 5th house here is a very good thing. Like I see this as a lot different from my Virgo risings, but because the emphasis on the 11th versus the 5th is really significant when you flip these signs. The 5th house Cancerian energy is going to be, again, it's so much about joy and pleasure, and also what gives us a feeling of not only pleasure or joy, but safety. So where do we find that perfect combination of safe and sweet, sweet and fun, joyful, creative, but also nurturing? Well, when you need a day for yourself, and you need to go and do some things for yourself. And maybe those things involve other people. Maybe it's not totally private, but the emphasis for Pisces this month to me seems to be upon what are you doing for the sake of your own joy, your own well-being, your own health or happiness? And you may need to go against, defy, even part ways with forces or people out there in the world that are trying to tell you what you should or shouldn't do. So I see this as a moment of emotional breakthrough, probably related to one's sense of happiness, joy, self-care. For example, let's say that someone was, let's say that you're whether it's your family or your colleagues or your friends, all kind of know and expect a certain version of you. I would see this as a month where you really check in with yourself and make sure that if you need to just depart social obligations or expectations and do something for the sake of your own joy or nourishment, that you're doing it. And there might be some conflict around that. Someone could call you selfish. Of course, the negative, or I would say maybe heavier version of this transit would be if you are doing something that's really reckless and self-indulgent and sort of needy, and you're not paying attention to social cues, what other people need from you, that's totally reasonable. I'm not used to seeing that, but it could be a thing as well. So it could be the exact opposite. In other words, where maybe you need to set aside some kind of selfishness or emotional immaturity in order to fulfill needs or obligations of in the other social dimensions of your life. But probably I would guess that it's the opposite for a lot of Pisces rising. That's going to be about, are you feeling okay? Do you need to like go to the well? Do you need to just take a day to go to the river? So do it if you need to. The other thing that could happen here would be a little bit of drama around children, mothers, women, pregnancy, because of that Mars and Cancer dynamic around the beginning of the month. So for example, let's just say you get into a big conflict with a family member about, abortion or something like that. Or let's just say that anything that could be troubling or problematic around your children and their school environment, or the social expectations of the outside world and how they're interacting with you and your child raising, or something like that. So those kinds of dynamics could come up. The solar eclipse is happening in Gemini on June 10th in your 4th house. That's the place of home and family. So there's definitely, when you see the seed of a solar eclipse in the 4th house, you usually see things like, getting married, having children, moving house, domestic life, and the newness that's growing around that domestic sphere of life. You could also see something as simple as, we're rearranging my house, or we have a guest bedroom and I'm turning it into my home office. But significant changes around home, family, property, living environment, those are coming through after the eclipse. And I really like that, especially given the kind of emotional dynamics of Mars and Cancer opposite Pluto at the beginning of the month that we just talked about. It's like, whatever those are, they're leading to some deeper change with the solar eclipse in the 4th house. For example, maybe you're just getting fed up with something. Maybe you're feeling burnt out by something. Maybe you're feeling joyless about something. And if you just make this simple shift in your home, or if you make a simple shift and, get a new apartment, or say to yourself, I don't need a roommate anymore, or something like that, some kind of shift around home and family could be intimately tied to whether or not you're getting enough nourishment, or you're feeling enough joy, or you're feeling creatively loose and free. So look for the shift around home and family with the eclipse on June 10th. And then finally, the square from Saturn and Uranus, that happens across the 12th and the 3rd house. I really like this as getting rid of limited ways of thinking about things. Uranus in the third wants to, is looking for mental, intellectual breakthroughs, new ideas, inspiration. Saturn in the 12th, limited, fearful, private, isolated. It feels a little bit more potentially melancholic. So you could be looking at, how do I get over my own resistance? This is one of the reasons why when I wrote down my notes, I said, it looks like Pisceans are trying to overcome something in order to feel more joy, because Uranus in the third squaring Saturn in the 12th, when that shows up, it's like, just, break out of a very limited way of looking at something, or a very limited way of a limiting habit or pattern or something like that. So I could see that happening. I could also see there being, like, you have to be careful around siblings. Like one of the family dramas that could come up for Pisces this month would be, things that are happening for siblings with Uranus in the third. And also, if you need to take time out for Pisceans, Saturn in the 12th, square Uranus in the third, a little bit of time out, a little bit of time to take care of yourself, make sure you're doing okay, could lead to some really deep insights and breakthroughs. So, maybe the breakthroughs come through by means of stepping out more, being more assertive somehow, taking care of your own needs a little bit more, or maybe they come by virtue of taking a step back and taking some time away, and then maybe some kind of insights crystallize through that. So that's what I've got for you as a Pisces rising. I'd love to hear stories from all of you guys for all 12 signs. How are you doing? How was your experience this month? How are you already feeling some of these energies? People always ask me, I feel like sometimes the transits occur before you say them. Like you'll tell us about the transits and I'll have been feeling it for 3 days already. Totally normal. Most of these transits you're going to start to feel them well before the dates that I mentioned, and even for some time after the dates that I mentioned. So, the dates that we mention are like the moments when it's like the exact moment of a full moon. But isn't it clear to everybody that you can feel the full moon the morning of? You can feel the full moon the morning after. So the dates are, like peak moments, but you can feel many of these things, depending on which transit, many days before, a week before, sometimes about a week after. So you usually hear me kind of address that in my videos, but just in case you're wondering, you could feel a lot of these transits already, because some of them are just like 4 or 5 days away. And then, like, the Mercury retrograde is already going on right now. We're coming down the hill toward the solar eclipse. So a lot of this stuff is already in process. All right. Well, it was fun to hang out with you guys today on live video. It's cool to see where you're all coming from. If people were asking, I really recommend doing doing the reading for your rising sign and not your sun sign. What's happening when people do a sun sign horoscope is they're reading for you as if you're taking your sun sign, which may or may not be in the first house of your birth chart, right? The sun sign could be in your 9th, 8th. It could be in any house whatsoever, but they're reading your whole chart as if your sun sign is the first house. And that's an artificial chart that's not in line with your birth chart. You're reading for your sun sign as though your sun sign is the first house, and then all the rest of the houses fall out in order from there. I don't particularly recommend that, because, if you sit down with an astrologer and you ask them for a transit report, they'll plug in the same transits and read them according to your birth chart, which is going to have your rising sign on the first house. So I recommend reading for your rising sign. I think it's always more accurate. That's just my opinion. So if you listen to this again throughout the month, like, I also recommend re-listening to a horoscope a few times. So if you come back and listen to it, you listen for your sun, then you might want to listen for your rising sign next time. Okay, well, don't forget, my new class is coming up, Ancient Astrology for the Modern Mystic. It starts, June 13th. It's coming up very quickly. I'll just pop it up on the screen again. If you guys have any questions about it whatsoever, you can email me, info@nightlightastrology.com. It's a great program. I really love this class. I love studying with people. I love spending a whole year immersed in the philosophy and spiritual practice of astrology. I love watching people have, moments of discovery, and I love watching people get the confidence to read for other people. And it's a great program. A lot of my friendships and most important things in life have happened through the astrological community I've made, through the classes and teachers that I've had. So Hopefully, we'll see some of you in class soon. Remember, you can take the early bird payment and save $500 off if you sign up before the start of class. You just have a little bit longer to do that, about 2 weeks. Payment plan or need-based tuition if you need it as well. All right, that's what I've got for you guys today. I hope you guys have a great Memorial Day if you're here in the US. Otherwise, have a great Monday wherever you are. And we will see you again tomorrow for a longer overview of all of the transits for June. There's 10 of them that I'm breaking down in tomorrow's video. So check that out and we'll see you soon. Bye, everyone.